the way, it's a disease, without question, has more names than any disease in history. I can name Kung Flu. I can name 19 different versions of names. Many call it a virus, which it is. Many call it a flu. What difference? I think we have 19 or 20 versions of the name.
I was actually surprised that the level of discomfort with that terminology was so high, given that there have been pretty strong signals from Trump that he was referring to China and not Chinese people or Asian Americans in the United States. But I think that it's heartening that people seem to understand, at least a majority of Americans seem to understand that the term China virus or Kung Flu does tend to indict people of Asian descent or people who look Asian in the United States. And we've definitely seen some upticks in anti-Asian bias incidents over the course of the corona pandemic.
So at Pew Research Center at the beginning of June, we did a survey of Americans and the general public about whether or not they've experienced increase of discrimination since the coronavirus outbreak. And what we found was that many Asian and Black Americans in particular has been more common for them to experience discrimination since the coronavirus outbreak. This is the majority of Asian Americans have said it's been more common to express racist views towards their group. That's over 50%. And Black Americans, about 45%, also said the same thing. So this has been something that we found in our research, and it just really gives us a measure of what has changed since COVID-19 outbreak. What's interesting that we found since the coronavirus outbreak is that Asian Americans in particular, since the coronavirus outbreak, there was a 31% increase in terms of them experiencing been subject to kind of slurs or jokes. And again, this is also, and then there's also a fear, 26%, that someone might threaten or physically attack them since the coronavirus outbreak. So those are kind of some interesting findings that we found, especially about Asian Americans.
Experience with discrimination can both depress and increase political participation depending on the kind of discrimination and depending on the kind of political behavior we're looking at. But I think what's interesting here is that Asian Americans of all different national origins have been a group that has moved most dramatically over the past 3 election cycles towards the Democrats. And so even in 2012, we saw about the same proportion of Asian Americans as Latinx supporting President Obama, for instance, over 70%. At the same time, there has long been also a sort of core of Republican supporters in Asian America. They never make up more than really 25% of Asian Americans, even lower in some surveys. But this group is, I think, also starting to question at least their vote choice and support for President Trump because of his insistence on using these derogatory terms, these racialized terms for the coronavirus. And so I think it does not help the GOP with any Asian American group to use this language and to have their president, their presidential candidate using this language. At the same time, I don't think anti-Asian bias is necessarily completely a partisan endeavor. So we do see Republicans much more likely, Trump supporters much more likely to think that using this language is okay. But, almost 1 out of 5 Democrats also think that it's appropriate. And anti-Asian bias has either ticked up among Democrats a little bit, or at least those who had anti-Asian bias feel more comfortable in the current environment expressing that.